Good evening. We're bringing you the latest on the Western military attack against Iraq. America and Britain tonight launched a substantial airstrike against Iraq. The attack is in retaliation for Iraq's continued refusal to cooperate with UN weapons inspectors. We've just had these pictures in from Baghdad as cruise missiles began to fall tonight. Cruise missiles fired from US warships in the Gulf and B-52 bombers exploding in Baghdad just a few minutes ago. The Pentagon has just released more details of the massive air forces it has unleashed against Iraq. The chairman of the American Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Henry Shelton, said the RAF would be among the forces deployed.
So today we commenced a military operation, Operation Desert Fox, that includes American and British forces to carry out military strikes aimed at degrading the very capabilities that Saddam has tried to preserve. The operation employs U.S. Navy aircraft flying from the decks of the USS Enterprise, U.S. Air Force and Royal Air Force aircraft operating from land bases in the region, and Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from U.S. Navy ships at sea and United States Air Force B-52s.
Our Washington correspondent now. James, what is the latest on the briefings that you're hearing there in Washington?
Well, we are beginning to get a picture, and it is only a picture, not details, of how long these operations are going to go on and what their objectives are. Now, President Clinton, in his address, as well as warning that Saddam continued to present a clear and present danger to his neighbors in the world, said that one of the reasons, the main reason for launching these attacks now was to get them over with before Ramadan starts, sometime on Friday night or Saturday morning. Now, William Cohen, the Defense Secretary, came on afterwards and said that the US objectives were they had a target list and they were going to work through that target list in the period that they've allotted themselves up to Friday night, presumably, and that once they are satisfied they've destroyed all the targets in that list, then military operations will cease and they'll go back to enforcing sanctions and continuing to try and disarm Saddam in other ways. So those are not really operational details, but they do give us an idea of just how long the Americans think that they are going to be launching these attacks and that they have a finite number of targets they want to hit rather than continuing bombing until Saddam throws his hands up and says, I surrender or whatever.
And James, reports that America has increased its forces in the area?
Yes, indeed. Some of those forces were on their way anyway as part of a Christmas turnaround. Certainly the B-52s based at the British island Diego Garcia were in the middle of a swap round to get the crews home for Christmas. A second aircraft carrier was on its way anyway, again as a precaution in the run-up to Christmas. So a lot of those forces on their way, and they will have many more available to them in the next 2 days.
Thank you, James. Well, the attack on Iraq began just before 10 o'clock this evening. Sporadic bursts of gunfire have continued throughout the night over Baghdad. Both the Prime Minister here and President Clinton have said they had no option but to strike against Saddam Hussein. Kevin Dunn reports.
Within the last hour, explosions and gunfire have again erupted in and above Baghdad, though the impact of the airstrikes is still not yet clear. The evening calm was broken when an American TV reporter was interrupted in mid-flow.
Well, if you look at the streets, if you look at the people, if you look at the cars, you don't get a sense of crisis. On the other hand, people who've been... Well, I just said that, and now a siren has just gone off.
Half an hour later, the first bursts of anti-aircraft fire signaled the start of the attacks. Tracers lit up the night sky as heavy machine guns and artillery pumped out fire. Reporters did not, however, see attacking warplanes, though a number of loud explosions have been heard, which might have been the impact of cruise missiles. The Prime Minister, confirming the attack live on news at 10, said he and the Americans had no option.
We are taking this military action with real regret, but also with real determination. We have exhausted all other avenues. We act because we must.
I have ordered a strong, sustained series of airstrikes against Iraq. They are designed to degrade Saddam's capacity to develop and deliver weapons of mass destruction, and to degrade his ability to threaten his neighbors.
Several large buildings in Baghdad appear to have been targeted, but the impact of the strikes may not become clear until daylight. Kevin Dunn, ITN.
And as we reported, within the last few minutes, cruise missiles have begun to fall on the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. Those pictures again showing this happening. And we'll talk in a moment about the targets, the likely targets of those cruise missiles. Baghdad under attack from American and British forces tonight. And I'm joined in the studio now by our diplomatic editor, Robert Moore. Robert, the targets there in Baghdad, what are they likely to be?
Well, I think as James is absolutely right in saying from Washington, we're now looking at very substantial attacks that will last for a number of days. Clearly the objective is to damage Iraq's ability to manufacture chemical and biological weapons and to curtail any possible Iraqi aggression. They'll also be aiming to hit the oppressive apparatus that keeps Saddam Hussein in power. So we're talking about perhaps factories, laboratories, and also, crucially, those sites where UN inspectors were denied access. An obvious example, the Ba'ath Party headquarters in downtown Baghdad, which they were denied access to last week, which led to this very critical Richard Butler report.
What about Saddam Hussein's presidential palace? Because everyone would be saying, are the forces actually trying to get rid of Saddam Hussein himself?
That's a key question emerging tonight. We haven't got the answer to that, but it's certainly a question. Is this a severe punishment strike, or is it part of a sustained military assault on Iraq designed really to undermine or even overthrow Saddam Hussein? And following that is also a fascinating question of whether this might be designed to trigger unrest from Saddam's internal enemies, the Kurds in the north, the Shiites in the south, or even trigger a military coup from within. These are key questions tonight.
Well, now, as we speak, we're going to see more pictures coming in from Baghdad as it comes under attack tonight. Live pictures from Baghdad. Quite extraordinary. Look, a car driving along the street while the city's under attack.
Really surreal. These are pictures being filmed live from the Ministry of Information on the banks of the river in central Baghdad. So certainly these are extraordinary pictures. And I think beyond that, though, we have to ask the really probing question of what happens when this attack ends. The Americans like to call this the morning after question. We now know that on-the-ground inspections basically is a policy that has now comprehensively failed. So whatever happens, we're now in uncharted terrain about how to contain Saddam Hussein in Iraq.
Thank you, Robert. We're going to cross now to Baghdad, where our correspondent Julian Mannion has been monitoring the attack. Julian, while we're continuing to look at live pictures from Baghdad, what is the latest there in the city?
Well, this seems to be going in waves, this attack. The waves, as far as one can see, consist of the cruise missiles coming in, and particularly as far as we're concerned, the response of the Iraqi anti-aircraft guns, including one on the roof of the ministry, the building to which I'm speaking to you from. And the response of the anti-aircraft guns is mainly what you're hearing of the pictures you're looking at, these sort of rattling whooshes. That this is the AAA, the heavy machine guns, in effect, and the tracers going up in the sky. Of course, they've got very little idea of what they're firing at, but as far as targets are concerned, we've now received an instruction from Iraqi officials that we are not to discuss precise locations or precise directions. But what I can tell you is that there is a very strong belief here, an unconfirmed report that we could regard as a very strong report, that a presidential palace, not too far from where I'm speaking, has been hit. And further to that, we know with certainty that some cruise missiles have landed on the periphery of Baghdad. We don't know in that case exactly what the targets may be.
Right. Well, I won't press you further on that since you're acting under censorship there. But really, Julian, these are extraordinary pictures coming in of a city under attack. And as I was discussing with Robert Moore in the studio, we've seen cars driving along almost as if the city is normal. What is it now, the early hour, in the middle of the night there?
Well, it is indeed the middle of the night. It is, in fact, 3:15 a.m. And as you say, there are cars in the streets, including, a few cars in the streets, including cars passing by this ministry. And one may assume that they are Iraqi. Some of them are ordinary Iraqis going about their business, and others are certainly security cars, possibly plainclothes cars, keeping a very close eye on the situation. Because what the Iraqi government is concerned about above all and that emerged very clearly today, is internal unrest as a result of air attacks. And one can assume that the security services are really working at full stretch.
Julian, in the studio, we're speculating that this attack is going to last for several days, despite the fact, presumably, that Ramadan starts at the weekend.
We believe that Ramadan starts on Sunday. The Ramadan each year is a matter of sighting the moon, and the moon may become visible in different countries at different times. But here we are talking, we believe, about Sunday. How this exactly will affect the military calculations of the Western powers, we're not quite sure. What we do know is that the attacks, as has been said in Washington, are directed at degrading the military capability or the military industrial capability of the government here. And therefore, for example, one may assume that among the targets are a number of factories which I visited earlier this year, escorted by Iraqi officials, out beyond the outskirts of the city. There's a whole complex out there, one of them indeed known as the Mother of Battle military factory. And the interesting thing about these places is, in fact, that when we visited them, it was clear that they were already under UNSCOM surveillance. Indeed, they had, for example, in several cases, UNSCOM cameras in them. And if they are targets, the question will be, what exactly is achieved? Is it really the purpose to wipe these things, wipe the productive capacity off the map once and for all? Obviously, we're speculating at the moment. We don't have the answer to these questions. We may perhaps in the future.
Julian, thank you very much indeed. We'll come back to you later as developments unfold. I'm joined now in the studio by Dr. Jo Spears from King's College London. She's an expert in weapons systems. Dr. Spears, you've been watching the pictures coming in from Baghdad. What's your assessment of what's happening?
I mean, I think we're just seeing the beginning of what is going to be a sustained campaign, as has already been mentioned. And really what we're seeing are the Iraqis rather hopefully sending up anti-aircraft fire against cruise missiles, which is not going to be effective. Apparently we're using both B-52s as standoff systems and sea-launched cruise missiles, but what we might expect next are them to actually use the F-15 Tomcats, because the Pentagon was talking about primarily using Navy assets. Now, one of the advantages of the Tomcats is that they've got some bunker-busting weapons. Some bunker-busting weapons, so they can actually penetrate, which is a key concern if you're actually trying to get the weapons of mass destruction capabilities.
How smart are these bombs? We've heard a lot in the years since the Gulf War of smart bombs. Yeah. Are the British and American forces able to target individual buildings?
They are able to do that, and a lot of the new systems they're going in with use GPS, global positioning systems, and that's quite effective. One of the problems is, though, that the smart ones haven't got enough punch. They're clever, they can find the target, but they haven't got enough firepower. So they actually need to follow it up with other things once they've actually used the smart weapons going in.
We heard from Tony Blair that our quarrel is not with the people of Iraq. Obviously there is the danger with a blitz such as the one that is occurring now in Baghdad, that civilians will be killed.
Of course, and Iraq has deliberately mixed in assets between civil and military to ensure that if there are attacks, then there will be civilian casualties. I think it's interesting that every spokesperson we've seen has stressed once again that the Iraqi people are not the target.
All right, Dr. Spears, thank you very much indeed. We'll come back to you in a moment, but we have some coverage now of the US Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, in Washington.
The purpose of the military strikes is really to degrade his weapons of mass destruction capability and his command and control and military security to the extent that it weakens his regime, fine. But as the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman have described the targets, I'm not going to go into that, but the purpose of the use of force is for the purpose of degrading those items that I mentioned.
And now, as we come to the end of this news report, we'll bring you live pictures once again from Baghdad as the city comes under attack from cruise missiles. These pictures, in fact, were brought into our building just a few minutes ago. The outskirts of Baghdad there being hit by cruise missiles launched from American warships in the Gulf and B-52 bombers. And we know that the US Defense Secretary has ordered a sharp increase in US air and ground forces in the Gulf. And the UN Security Council, the latest news in, the US Security Council will hold a formal meeting at Russia's request later today. That's all from us for the moment. Bye-bye.
After the break, we rejoin our documentary, The JFK Assassination File.
Come on, Cole, check back! 50, 50, 50, 50, 50!
Who would I most like to have a one-to-one with?
The main man.
The top dog, the Grand Fromage!
The one and only Mr. John Winston Lennon. I'd ask him how he dealt with all that hysteria.
And what really caused the group to split up? I'd love to get inside John's head. See what made him tick.
Oh, wow.
Happiness is a good vibe.
Far out.
Hey,
For tomorrow, who knows? Great, beautiful.
John.
Peace, peace.
Peace. I wonder what he'd do to promote peace today.
If I could have a one-to-one with John Lennon, I'd ask him how it felt to be thought of as arrogant, when actually, he was just as vulnerable as the rest of us.
Who would you most like to have a one-to-one with? Our mobile phone service gets people talking.
As we travelled together, we explored the mysteries of life. Who are we? Where do we come from? And does the light really go out when you close the door?
Half Irish lager.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Are you the full 4.3% Irish?
Because more Tesco stores are now open 24 hours, you can pop in when we're less busy.
Excuse me. I want nappies for the baby, carrots for the donkey, and marshmallows for the Archangel Gabriel.
Follow me, madam. Which means we'll be able to give you more attention.
They're for baby Jesus. I'm his grandmother.
And with more customer assistance, we'll help you through the checkout in double quick time.
There you go. Right. Back to Bethlehem. Excuse me. Sorry. Look! Just in time.
Tesco wish you all a stress-free Christmas. Every little helps. Nurse it better with Day Nurse. Nurse your headache. Nurse your runny nose. Nurse your tickly cough. Nurse your cold and flu symptoms to get a good night's sleep. Nurse it better with Night Nurse.